This is the
Spartan Podcast.
where we illuminate the world of parenting children with autism. I'm CJ, a proud dad to a wonderful 6-year-old with autism. Through my journey, I've discovered the challenges, triumphs, and unique experiences that come with raising a child on the spectrum. Inspired by those experiences, I created this space where parents like you can find understanding, share stories, and learn from each other. Join me as we explore insights, strategies, and support, all while celebrating the brighter spectrum of our children's lives. Now, let's dive in and cast light on this path together. Joining me for our very first episode today is fitness trainer, author, and single dad, Gary Martinez Jr. Gary, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, Christopher, thank you so much for having me on. I'm just stoked and I'm ready to get started.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. And like you said, my name is CJ. I am a dad to a 6-year-old with autism, and it's been an interesting struggle and experience and education and overall primarily enjoyable experience, even though it's so different from what you see from neurotypical children. Raising him, Gary, I think in our messages you mentioned that you have an 18-year-old.
Yes, yep. She's 18. That was quick. Can't believe we're already here. And she is a young adult, and she's just been. She was talking about this moment when she did turn 18 last year for like about a year straight, repetitively. So she is happy to be a young adult.
Wow. I mean, the time really does go by. It's like one moment you're holding them, and then the next minute, like, you can't pick them up anymore. It kind of makes you sad a little bit, but at the same time, it's like it's really neat watching them grow, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have the memories of like, yeah, the earlier years and the progress, the up and down roller coaster of what we go through in our life, and yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, because I see Facebook memories every day. It's like, oh my gosh, I remember when she was that small, and we were into this thing back then, and now we're into this thing right now. But at the same time, like you said, it's really cool to see the progression and see how we've grown up during the years. And so for me, it's just about being in the moment with everything.
Absolutely. And, just kind of like kick us off here, I would really like to hear about, in the beginning, like, when did you start noticing like she was autistic, and like setting up like um the evaluation and getting the diagnosis, and like what was that like for you in your experience?
Um, so for me, it was like I didn't know what autism was, of course, back then. Sensory processing disorder, ADHD, all of that stuff. So I didn't know what was going on. So basically, it was probably around that 2 years of age thing where at that time we should be starting to explore the world and moving and playing and crawling and starting to engage and responding when you hear your name being called, but none of those things were happening. So that was like the first red flag, like, oh my gosh, I'm calling your name, Monica, but she's not responding, she's not looking this way. And at that time she liked to be more in isolation and like play in a corner, not want to play with people, and also not very active at that time as far as movement is concerned. So that was the start right there of noticing that we're we're a little different as far as not doing those things that you expect at that age. So we were roughly, I'm going to say, not diagnosed until about age 6 or 7, because a single doctor, it seems like, doesn't want to be the one to officially make a diagnosis. So therefore, I'm going to say it took us a few years of running around to different specialists, going back and forth until they all, I guess, kind of collaborated and made the decision that, okay, your daughter is autistic, she has sensory processing disorder, she has ADHD, and there's probably a few other things that I just can't remember at this point. And so at that time, my daughter was also nonverbal. She didn't start speaking until she was 9. So she was having a lot of meltdowns. So she would start to hit herself and stiffen up her body from a standing position and start screaming to the top of her lungs. Then she would throw herself to the ground and arch her back really hard. I was like, dang, this girl is strong. She was like rocking back and forth like a rocking chair, but she couldn't express herself. So, she was suffering inside. And I felt at that time like I don't know what to do. I feel like a failure as a parent. So then our next step was the doctor gave us our first intervention steps, which was speech therapy and occupational therapy. So, in those two right there, we had them luckily in the same building, and they gave you a choice, which I really am grateful for to this day. It was like you can drop your kid off, come back in an hour, or you can sit out there in the waiting room and read a magazine, all that kind of stuff, or you are invited to come inside to the room. So I went inside to that room, and it kind of turned me back into like a competitor, like you're playing sports days. Like this is something new, like a sport. I want to know how to get better, how to be at my best. So as a parent, my role was like, okay, I'm going to pretend I'm putting on some glasses here, turn into a student. I took my backpack, I took like a pen and pad, old school, and I just started asking questions like, you know, what are we doing right here? What is this activity doing? How does it help us? And I started turning into a little pest, like um, outside of the sessions, who do you follow? I would ask the therapist, like, do you have any book authors you recommend? Things like that, because I wanted to self-educate myself. So I was staying up to the wee hours in the morning, 2, 3, 4 a.m., wanting to learn as much about autism, this occupational therapy that we're in. And during those sessions in the occupational therapy, I was learning what Monica's favorite things were to do to help her body and brain connect so she can organize herself and be in the moment for the day and not see the world as a scary place. So uh, quickly, her favorite thing back then and to this day right now to self-soothe is rocking back and forth in the swing. And during that time, we had very low muscle tone, so it was hard to feel parts of our body, which can be really scary. So for her, she like the it was more like to me, I don't know the words, so I'm just gonna give a picture of like a big pantyhose, like that soft compression where you go inside that big looking pantyhose type of sock, and she needed that input touching her body so it can get feedback to be more present in the moment. So she would rock back and forth in that swing first, and then our therapist would help guide her into the activity of the day that we did. So I started to get really fascinated. And being a fitness trainer, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a new way of doing activity slash exercise, but it's so fun at the same time. So what happened was we just implemented what we were learning and we brought that back home. And then we would jump into our speech therapy. And because of the low muscle tone, our jaw, our mouth, our tongue were were not as strong as we needed them to be to help start to say words. So before we started speech therapy, we had to do kind of like an OT session where we had to do some activities for those parts inside the mouth to help give them some strength so we can do our lesson in speech therapy. And both those therapists were like amazing. We did have more than one speech therapist, but that first one would always stand out, Angela, because she was such a positive person that she made my daughter laugh. She made her feel comfortable. And it's always about having that right fit. And from there, she was starting to turn that corner, starting to say a few words, but we just were not there yet. To take it a step further, and then we can go on to your next question. Is I was starting to network because I wanted to be an independent fitness trainer to explore and work with more than one population. So in my networking, I met with two people that moved to Colorado from Florida because um, their son had like a brain injury. So they had this therapy called lens therapy, and it stands for low energy neural feedback system. So anyone with a brain can use this type of service because we all have somewhere in our brains where we're stuck in particular areas. So we were very stuck. And they showed us a graph like you're way up here. We'll say it was like 100 or could have been a little higher than 100. I'm not exactly sure at the moment. But it started to go down. So what happened was we were starting to become more flexible in places of the brain that we were stuck in. So in about the third or fourth session, Monica sang her first song. And I remember it just like it was yesterday. So it was Miley Cyrus Wrecking Ball. And we would sing that before we were going to school. So we would be outside for 20 minutes doing some activities before we went into the unpredictable world of school. And then she changed it to she started to like the not the chickmunks, but she liked the chipettes, the girls. So she liked the chipette version, like the she liked the tone of their voice, and they made a wrecking ball song. So we would listen to that. And then about a week later, after she sang that first song, she spoke her first sentence. So that therapy right there was kind of with the combination of the other things uh, helped her become verbal, and now she's a nonstop talking machine. Where now it's cool because I know her likes, I know her special interests, and it just makes the adventure on this journey that much better.
She's got a lot of time to make up for.
Oh, we made up for it. We're a super active party, just doing the things that she likes, going to her favorite parks, doing it as many times as she likes to help her be successful in her day.
So that's amazing. So she was basically nonverbal until she was, you said 7 or 8, and then started
Nine.
the speech therapies, and
Nine.
now she's 18 and fully verbal.
Yeah, I mean, what we did was we combined all those things right there, where we made our own way to get what we needed to transition to the day, whether we're going out the door to a store, a park, school, you name it. So we made it fun where we live in a 24/7 Disney world. So um, one day she was having meltdowns. It kind of like rewind, kind of like go back for a second. And
Hmm.
I was like, you know what? I'm tired. I'm just tired of this. You know, that I have to give her space, and so she could feel safe and kind of wind her way out of it. But that requires her suffering, like screaming, yelling, hitting, self harm for who knows how long, and then it drains her energy, and of course you're going to get wore out and eventually deflate and come back to get out of that situation and come back to you. But on this day at the playground, she got triggered at the park, and I know it was noise. I know it was smell. I know it was that crazy wind because wind, weather is a big factor. And I was right there on the bench, and she was on the top of the playground. I heard her screaming. I was like, "Oh man, that's Monica!" And my intuition that day said, "You know what? You're not gonna uh, just watch this time. Run up there right now, buddy, and use some of her favorite movie parts and help her get out of this." So I did that, and I went into the movie Frozen, and when I change from when I do a play character, I'm no longer dad, so I can act any way I want. I could be sarcastic. I get real amplified. I lose my voice a lot, as you can maybe tell. My voice isn't completely clear, maybe. So I was up there, and I just improvised right away, and I did something along the lines of like, oh my God, Monica, I can't believe Hans. Why why the heck did he shackle up Elsa? She did nothing wrong. Why is he playing games with Anna? So I'm talking about two characters that she loves, the sisters. So that changed her from starting to hit herself and scream to pay attention to me. Like, yeah, I, like why, oh, that Hans. So she was getting upset at Hans, but she was starting to peel out and come out of that meltdown. And then I took it a step further because we need activities for our body. Like I said, we have low muscle tone. So I saw a soccer net, And I was like, oh my God. And every time I say, oh my God, Monica turns and she's like, what, Dad? And I was like, that soccer net is Ursula from The Little Mermaid. And she is grabbing Ariel and she wants to trap her because she wants her to sign that paper so she can take her voice out. Do you want to go save Ariel? And she was like, yes, Dad. So she was coming out of that meltdown slowly. And she's not a runner. But on that day, she said, I said, let's run over there and save her. Is that okay? And she was like, let's go. So we ran about 10 yards to that soccer net. And at that time, my son was playing right there nearby with my stepdaughter at the time. And I was like, guys, come here. And I was like, pss, 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 whispering to them, like, okay, this is what I just said for Monica. So purposely fall on the ground, laugh, let Monica rescue you. So by doing that for a few minutes, and I was doing it too, like, oh my gosh, oh, Ursula, her tentacles got me. I can't get up. Monica, help. She starts to pull me. I fall down. She laughs. She pulls us all up. So while she's laughing, she's also focusing on the moment. She's also squatting, bending, pulling. So she's getting all this feedback to her body, all this love. So her brain and body are becoming BFF, best friends forever. So within a few minutes, she was out of the meltdown. And the way I knew that on top of that was she grabbed my hand, she squeezed it. I was like, whoa, this girl's strong. And she was like, Dad, let's go. And I was like, where, Monica? And she said, let's go back to the playground. I want to swing. So from that day on, that's how we eventually in time we stopped the meltdowns once and for all.
That's amazing. So what you're saying is like there was like this big moment of like sensory overload for her on the playground, and instead of just kind of like letting her dwell within that sensory overload and that overstimulation, you basically redirected and focused her onto a single thing that allowed her mind to pull herself out of that.
Yeah, I just from that moment on, I just learned that, you know what, we're gonna fight back and we're gonna use our special interest, something that we enjoy, and let's put that in our headspace to take out that negative part that was in our headspace to defeat that. And it's funny because when we do, well, the meltdowns are funny, but when we do that, and now we do it just part of a routine, like going to parks, and not only do we swing, but we've upgraded where we like to push swings, because when we push the swing, you're getting all this feedback to your joints and your muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we like to do is we're fighting evil all the time. So we're fighting all these evil characters. So like in Frozen, there's Hans, and in like Cinderella, there's Lady Tremaine, and the list goes on. So when we're pushing in swings, the invisible evil character that she'll say like Lady Tremaine. So I have to do a voice for Lady Tremaine. I have to say something sarcastic, and she'll start laughing. I'm like, all right, push her, and she'll push her really hard, and that's what I want. So she pushes her with her upper body, and she also has a little squat going down with that. And she laughs, and we're like, "All right, you defeated Lady Tremaine." So we like high five, and so that helps her get back to herself. Well, for a meltdown purpose, but also when we're just doing it as a routine in our daily life, just going to those places and doing that, it just prepares her for what we have to do in the day. And at any time, if she wants to go back to the park, okay, let's go back. And I want to go to this park. So we'll change its specific parks and we'll do that. Or it also transitions to now where we also do it off of YouTube, like watching favorite movie scenes. We do that also. And then also we like to burn CDs because we're vintage old school. So we'll burn CDs of favorite either songs or movie parts. And then we'll take it with us in the car to repetitively listen to it because all that's doing is helping her just feel good to wherever we're going. So that's kind of that's how we roll.
You know that's amazing, and it really illustrates like the amount of patience that as parents we need, and the out of the box understanding, because we were all brought up a certain kind of way, and we see how other kids, and like for the most part most of us were brought up in pretty similar fashions, and when it came to things like communication and behavior and the idea of like listening to our parents and not listening and consequences, and that whole world changes when it comes to dealing with a kid, on the spectrum, where those breakdowns aren't necessarily a child who's misbehaving or being bad or having an attitude, but a kid who just can't handle all of the input they're receiving at that time. And it seems like you've really mastered that way of understanding, like, this isn't my child's not being bad, my kid just needs me right now.
Yes, and it's a lot of patience, like you said. It's a lot of understanding. It's a lot of advocating along the way. Because I know in the early years, it was because we were having those meltdowns more, and people were seeing them and not understanding what's going on. It was me uh, sharing our story with people like, yeah, my daughter doesn't mean to do this. She's having a meltdown. We're autistic, and when this happens, it's a chemical brain imbalance where she can't control what's going on. So it's not like a tantrum that we know what we're doing to try to get something. So I had to explain that, let them know we need space. There's a certain way I have to handle her. I know when to chime in, and these are some of the things that we do. So yeah, you're wearing many hats as a parent to also educate the world. And along along the way, we've met a lot of friends where it's crazy how we said earlier we were nonverbal, and now we're talking
Mhm.
our heads off, and we're she's more confident. And when we go out to places in public, she'll just walk up to someone and start talking to them. But she can read a person and kind of know the energy of the person to feel comfortable to talk to a specific person. And she'll just start saying, hey, my name is Monica, what's your name? And then she'll be like, have you ever seen this movie before? And she'll start going into her favorite parts. And they may not know the favorite parts, not even know the movie, but they're interested in her because she's so passionate about talking about that story. And she'll go on and on. And I'll tell people like, hey, it's okay when you feel comfortable to chime in, and if you need to redirect the conversation, that's how you go about doing that. So yeah, it's amazing to watch our kids progress. And just that, like you said earlier, it's there's a different way that we have to raise them. And for me, it was about open communication,
Mhm.
and just earning her trust. I had to earn her trust first for her to let me into her world. And then when that started happening, it just blossomed from there, that we're just like we're very tight, and whatever she likes I like. And then what I learned from that also is when that happens, all of a sudden she's liking stuff that I like. I was like, wait a minute, that's what I like. I'm obsessed with the 80s decade. And all of a sudden she's listening to Debbie Gibson. It's like, that was my favorite song when I was a teenager. And now she's burning that song so we could play in the car. And she's like requoting, liking some of the scenes like in a Rocky movie, because I'm obsessed with Stallone movies. And so then she goes into your world, and it's just pretty cool how that happens.
Yeah, 100%. When my guy was little, right around 2, about the same time you were mentioning before, uh, we noticed when he would get frustrated, he would start hitting his head off of the floor.
Hmm.
And that was pretty much like the first sign, um, that things maybe weren't quite as what you would call normal.
Right.
And he was about 4 when it was finally like, okay, yeah, this is a thing that needs to be taken care of. And there was a lot of back and forth, and with his mom, there was a lot of denial that something was going on. Which, for anybody out there who's listening, who feels bad because you spent time in denial, it's actually very common for parents to experience that sort of thing, at least at first, because the idea of, oh, something isn't normal, something's wrong, parents don't like to go that direction. It's like an emotional thing for them. But my little guy finally got his evaluation at 5. We got the diagnosis, and we've been working on it since then. He wasn't completely nonverbal, but he wasn't like conversational. He did a lot of scripting and parroting, which
Hmm.
was you kind of learn how to understand what he's doing and like what he means when he's doing that scripting. And he's been in speech therapy for the last year now, through school, and that's actually improved a lot. I'm sure everybody heard him in the middle of Gary coming down here and asking me for chocolate, and now he's upset with me because I told him no, so he ran away. But uh, and that's another thing. Anytime he comes down here and interrupts the podcast, I'm not going to edit that out, because part of this show, I really want people listening to experience, what it's like having a child with autism around, who doesn't always 100% understand the activities you're doing and the social cues, and what would be considered in a standard situation rude and not rude, and just so that you're not feeling like you're alone. Because honestly, and Gary, I'm interested to know if you felt this way, especially in the beginning, where you felt maybe alone, because that's how I felt very alone, and like I was the only one dealing with it. I didn't know anybody else who could relate to my specific parenting situation, because it seemed like everyone else around me who had kids were just having this very average leave it to beaver experience, and like their kids were turning 3 and talking and learning to ride bikes and going fishing, and my kid just was not doing those things. So finally being able to get involved and find out that other people were experiencing the same stuff was almost comforting. And I don't know if maybe you share that sort of insight, or if it was different for you.
Yeah, so for me, it was the same thing. It was like feeling alone in the world, like we're we're different. What do we do? How do I? How do we? What other help is out there? Is anyone else going through this type of situation with their kid? Like I said in the beginning, I was a novice. I didn't know anything. So, but what I did learn down the way was that there are support groups on social media. So then I started to join like Facebook groups in my local area for autism parents, autism and Asperger's, just different ones. And I've learned that when you do look for groups like that on social media, you want to check out like a few things. Make sure the group is active, that it's going on, that it's engaging, and it's current like that. Because some groups are out there, but they may be the group may be visible, but there's no action on there. So of course you don't want to join one like that. And also you want to find like the right fit. Like check different ones out, see which ones you may see that resonate with you and makes you feel comfortable. Like, oh, okay, boom, I'm going to join that one. So joining a group like that was one of the big things right there, and it led to meeting some of the other parents in the community, and it led to going to some of the events to hang out with parents that their kid is autistic or whatever other thing, whatever else, and so we're comfortable. There's no judgment or anything like that. We're all in this together, and we're just trying to have the best time. And so that was one of the big turning points for me. It also led me um, down the road to, at one time I had a sensory gym. I subleased. My friend had a taekwondo studio, so I was like, man, I got to get something that's safe and padded. So the studio had mats everywhere. So I mean, I got donations from the Arc thrift store, and I was able to buy equipment and just set up a little area of different things like trampoline, um, tunnels, and play kitchen, and all sorts of things. I just can't remember at the moment everything. I had like a saucer swing and just a good little mix there. So when people did come, their kid can just like naturally go to where they wanted to play. So that helped me out a lot right there. Was just getting started in the community from the local social media groups, and then it also led me to want to write a book as my way of giving back. And I'm introverted, by the way, so like it took me to break out of my shell a lot too. So I did write a book. My first book was about just kind of giving back to the, to helping that parent whose kid is recently just diagnosed and it's a new world to the parents, just to give them some insight. So I did have like some contributors in there to like share their type of therapies and services so a parent can kind of know what to expect. I shared the star of the book, of course, Monica, a little bit of her journey, things that she was into back at the time, things that we had to do to help us function in the world, just again to make the world feel safe to her, not as scary, and so she could be as happy as possible um, by doing those sorts of things.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's really nice to hear these sort of stories because while it's relatable, I'm imagining it's different for a lot of us. I didn't have the same experiences with mine, but I really want to go down this road with you here because a big part of this show that I want to do is not just necessarily about the kids themselves, but I want to make other parents feel relatable, like there's other people out there who get it, you know, and we
Hmm.
can empathize a little bit with each other and maybe even form a community here where we can kind of come together on mutual understanding. And I think like we've kind of started doing that here. Something I really want to get your insight on, and maybe you can elucidate on this a little bit. When before his diagnosis, when I was first getting used to the idea of him being autistic, I had a period of time where I felt horrifically guilty because up until that point in his life, I was treating him like a neurotypical child.
Hmm.
So those when he was overwhelmed and overstimulated and he would have those autistic breakdowns, instead of being there to comfort, redirect, and focus him, I would assume he was having tantrums and I would punish him. I would put him in timeout. I would take something away from him and things like that. And then just not being able to communicate with him and not understanding him. And then when I finally found out, you know, your son's autistic, and then these are the things you can expect. I started doing that research and I realized that these behaviors weren't that of a child who's misbehaving, but a child who just can't communicate. I felt like the worst parent to ever exist. And it actually took me probably 6 months to a year to come to terms with, you know, it wasn't that I'm a bad parent. I was an ignorant parent. And the only thing I can do is move forward and not make those same mistakes. And I'm wondering, maybe for you, if there was any of that with you as well.
For me, what I can remember a little bit was I was just really concerned about, like why can't we talk? Um, why doesn't my daughter want to play with me? Um, why can't we have direct eye contact? And of course, later I learned that's not easy to do. It can be very overwhelming, very intimidating, like looking into the sun. So I guess for me, it was more like I was curious why we couldn't do things, and then I also had the guilt of why don't I know what to do? Did I do something wrong to create this? And then of course later you start to learn different things like no, is there's environmental factors, there's different things. So you did nothing wrong, your child did nothing wrong, but let's work on this and see. I just kind of gave myself an assignment like, man, I want to know how to communicate with my daughter.
Yeah.
So I just kind of, like I said earlier, I just jumped into self-education mode. To me it was like a sport, as far as wanting to learn and be good at what's going on in my daughter's life and to compete at that, to learn and to be at my best to help her. So to me, it kind of went that way. Kind of went like an athlete's mentality for me, just
Okay.
from playing sports. So I kind of went that direction. But I will say that um, uh, I I enjoy, because like I said, I'm introverted. I enjoy that we do things a little differently, because it's like those simple things of just like watching a video over and over makes a person feel good. Um, I'm totally cool with that because I learned last year from some general tests, and I don't mean to go off subject, but this can give you a little insight that I scored high for uh, some autism and Asperger traits. Not an official
Hmm.
diagnosis, but these general tests showed that part. And I was like, wait a minute, I've been doing this since I was a kid too. I was isolated because I was introverted. Um, I got obsessed when we moved back from Australia in the early 80s, and I got obsessed with what I saw on TV right away. Excuse me. So it was Rocky. So it was Stallone. It was Rambo. And I've learned that, you know what? I think Rambo's introverted like me. And I was like, no wonder why I like both of those movies. I like pretty much all of his movies, but I'm more now obsessed with Rambo because he's more of a loner doing his thing and he wants to do the right thing. And I was like, that was kind of me when I was growing up. No wonder why I've been able to mold, maybe it kind of helped mold me to when Monica got to talking and to learning her interests that I got it. And like the other thing is like when you're watching a video that you like, whether it's a movie scene or listening to that favorite song, a couple of things are happening. It's something that you like, you know the words to it, you know how it makes you feel. So it is for us a coping skill. And so I just learned that the simple things in life go a far way for somebody, and and that's all I need. So I'm more into us and what we need. And then when we go out into the world, and if people are a little curious about our repetitiveness or whatever that we're doing, I'm happy to share it. Now I have more wisdom, and like I said, we've been able to make friends. Not all the time. Sometimes we don't make friends. Sometimes some people don't get it, and they can get a little emotional and feisty. But I'm just like, you know what? That person, they probably came to the place, a store, wherever we may have encountered them at, and they're probably dealing with something themselves. So we're not going to take offense to that because you just don't know how hard it is for a person, and you know this, how hard it is sometimes just to get out of the front door, or how hard is it, or it can be hard just to get dressed or take a shower or eat. So, we're just grateful that we have progressed with that because we did start out as a very picky eater, and I had to get creative to find a way to help us get more nutrition inside of us. So to me, it's just about going back to patience, understanding, being creative, and definitely learning how to adapt in the moment.
Yeah, I'm definitely going through some of that right now, especially the picky eating part.
Uh huh.
And I actually have a person who's coming on later as a guest to talk about picky eating and feeding therapy and things like ARFID. So I'm kind of glad you brought that up because one of the biggest things is trying to get that nutrition in them, and the frustration that comes with trying to do these things, and then having to take that moment to breathe and be like, it's not their fault, it's not my fault, this is what it is, and then like really just working with that and like learning that patience. And then you had also mentioned like being out in public, and raising her has taught you like to sort of empathize, or at a minimum not judge what another parent's going through, especially when a kid's having a meltdown in public. And maybe as parents of children with autism, we're able to recognize those meltdowns, and like, oh, that's not a tantrum, that kid's just overstimulated right now. And while other parents are like, or other people in general are staring like, oh my god, are you going to let that child act that way?
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of brings me to my next question, because I did go through this period for a while, and even sometimes to this day, depending on how severe the situation is, where I'm in public and I sort of feel this need to like explain the situation to strangers who are staring. Um, not necessarily like making up excuses, but like reasoning, because there's like this like level of embarrassment that I'm dealing with because my son is overstimulated and causing a scene, and I'm not angry with him, but I'm embarrassed because these other people around me don't understand the situation. You can see them judging you,
Mm-hmm.
and To me, it sounds like you've really gotten a firm grasp of that sort of situation now. But did you ever have like a similar experience?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I had to learn how to be firm with myself and just how to had to put on horse blinders and just focus on Monica versus what others might say. But in the very beginning, I was, all that caught me off guard, so I wasn't prepared for that. So yeah, I did encounter people with judgment and giving me their 2 cents, and I just basically went into a defense mode. But then I would have to catch myself and go into advocating mode. um, so in the beginning, some of that just didn't work out with some people, but not everyone. You're not going to in life, period, uh, get along with everybody. So I can't spend all my energy with that. So yeah, we did have those run-ins where it just had a few collisions. That's what happened, and it's just kind of like a learning lesson for the next time around. Like, okay, what can I do if I encounter this again, and kind of just prepare myself. So it's taught me a lot about as far as keeping my composure, especially through situations like that. Um, and people sometimes are like, "How do you keep it together when so and so is happening?" and blah blah blah. And I know why I do it, but then I I was starting to listen to a lot of podcasts over the last 3 years, and one that kind of res- resonates with this for me at least is I was watching this former Navy SEAL. His name's Jocko, and so he has his own podcast, but he also gets interviewed on other podcasts. So he was being interviewed, and they asked him about his topic, and they were like, "How do you keep it all together without losing it when you're in war and you're in charge of all these men and women?" And he said, "Well, it's not about me." So right there, that stood out. That's my motto. It's not about me. So he said, I don't think about myself. I think about my men and women that I have to protect during that time. And then I get to myself later. And I was like, that's exactly what I do. Is like my focus is it's always about Monica. It's not about me. So now when we may encounter a moment or something, because we can always something can always trigger us. um, I have to focus on her, and if she says we need this, then that's what we're going to do to get to that. And if it's in a public setting, I'll just let people know, hey, and I'm cool now. I'm just like, hey, my daughter's having a rough moment, we're autistic, this is what's going to happen, and this is what we're going to do to help her get out of that. She has no control over that. So sometimes, so now people, they can see that you're pretty confident in your words, like giving them the 411. Now some people will be like, is there anything we can do? Blah blah blah. And I'll go back to that. Yeah, you can. Yep. Just give us a little space right here. I know when to chime in, and I don't know how long this may last, but we will get out of it. And when we do get out of it, our thing that myself and my daughter do is she's like, Dad, it goes back to our Disney World. She'll be like, Dad, you know who jumped in me? And I'm like, who? And for example, she'll be like, it was Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. Excuse me. Excuse me. See, I'm sorry. My
Bless you.
voice always comes and goes. So like, he jumped in me. He made me do all that stuff. Ah, oh, that damn Gaston. And I'm like, I know, big girl. It wasn't your fault at all. So I always let her know, you did nothing wrong. That damn evil Gaston. I'm glad we got him out. And then it goes back to that high five. All right, we're done. Let's go. And that's just the way we do those things.
Yeah, that's actually really cool that she's able to compartmentalize and like sort of apply like metaphors to sort of anthropomorphize those emotions, so she's able to like effectively communicate to you like what was going on there.
Yeah, because it gives her a way to get that out of her headspace by verbally saying how we resolved it. And then we also sometimes, in whatever type of situation where we can get triggered or something negatively goes on in a day, where now she's built on her coping skills, where she will now draw to express what may have happened, and she'll draw it out on paper, which is another way to get that feeling out of your headspace. And then also she'll write about things, so she'll like journal what happened. So I was like, man, this is so cool that she now has done coping skills that therapies would recommend and see if that's a good fit for you, and she has done it by herself. So I was like, man, that is just so cool.
Okay. I kind of want to shift. I mean, I know I've asked a lot of like foundationally like negative questions here because I feel like a lot of people experience those emotions in those scenarios. But I kind of want to shift over to a more positive thing. You had mentioned that you were a single dad, and I was wondering, you know, what is it like uh, introducing your daughter to, say, somebody you're seeing or somebody that you're going to potentially have like this like relationship with, and you know, introducing them to the idea that, this person in my life has autism and it's is not going to be what you typically see and interact with. Like, what is that scenario like?
Right. So we have a really small circle, really small circle. So
Hmm.
in that situation, it's about me getting to know a person first for a period of time, and then as I get to know them and feel comfortable, then our talk more into about, one of my kids is autistic, and our start sharing our journey with them. And if they're interested, that's cool. We can continue that conversation. Um, so if that pans out right there, then we can start to slowly. Well, what I do is I would tell my daughter, like, hey, I met this person, or give her, some background about this person to see what she thinks. So it's all about, if Monica accepts them, we can um, we can meet. If she don't accept them, then it's not going to work for me. So
Right.
it's led to, like, okay, we got to do like a video call. We got to see not only just her and I, my daughter, talking about it, but we got to see face to face, like on virtual, to see if that energy is still there, to see if that person that I may be talking to still feels that same way when you see them face to face. Because now you're almost hands on. So now there's an actual conversation. You can see the person, and let's see how they do in their first conversation. And it's a gradual process. We kind of just
Hmm.
have to build it slowly from there. And then if it seems to be going well, then we can look at an in-person meets like that. But it's, yeah, you just got to be, very protective. Make sure somebody, if they're interested in you, that, I, I have two kids, and one of our worlds is like this, and that's my world too. So is, are you good with that? You want to be in the world like that? You want to be into our world? Because you're going to have to go through her first, and you're going to have to prove it. So
It's the vetting system.
that's just kind of how it goes right there.
Yeah, I had a similar experience when I first re-entered the dating world, and I was with somebody for X number of months, and then she asked to meet him, and I had to have that conversation where it's like, I need you to understand, like, I understand you have experience with other children, but this is nothing like you've ever been through, and if I bring you into his world, if something happens, and things go wrong between us, I won't be able to explain it to him.
Hmm.
So I need you to be on that level where you understand that if I let you meet him, this is far more serious than maybe you and I currently think it is. And I had to have that conversation. And I'm still with her to this day. So it
Awesome.
obviously went well, but I'll tell you what, in the last year and a half, uh, that they've spent getting to know each other, and she's even at this point still getting used to some of the things that
Hmm.
he does and how he reacts and sort of um, the things that he expresses. And sometimes at this point, I'm so used to him. And in the 6 years that I've had to get used to his behaviors and his methods of communications, sometimes I have to pause and remember that she doesn't have that same level of experience. So she's still getting used to that,
Right.
you know? And I remember a couple of months ago. So my son, like you had mentioned before with your daughter, he struggles with making eye contact. However, if he's upset with you, he will look you dead in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
And he did that to her the first time, and it like kind of freaked her out a little bit. And I was like, yeah, yeah, that's you just learned how he communicated that he's upset with you.
Mm-hmm.
She told him no about something. You know how
Yeah.
kids are when you tell
Yeah.
them no.
Yeah. Yeah, and that
So
brings up a good point. I just want to throw this in. I didn't mean to interrupt,
no,
but
you're fine. You're
sometimes
fine.
I have to let people know, whether it's a potential partner or at school or wherever where it may be, that to be aware of words that could trigger our kids. So sometimes I have to let people know at times that, yeah, why was so and so, they got all triggered and amplified about something. I was like, oh, what happened? Oh, okay, that word right there, that word triggers us. So in place of that word, I use this word. So that's what I have to let people know also sometimes.
You know what? When I started this podcast and started the idea of getting this thing off the ground, it was one of the things I was hoping was to learn something from other people through these conversations. And you really just taught me something there, because that's not something I've ever tried. Where the way I communicate, I never tried varying that to change his responses. So like when I like he came down here before while you were talking, asked for chocolate, and I just said
Hmm.
no, and he
Yeah,
got mad at me and he went upstairs.
right.
I chalked that up to just being kids, but maybe that is something I can do, is like alter the way I say no, right? So
Yeah,
thank you for
I've
that.
had to learn. Yeah, you're welcome. I've had to learn that I had to check myself, and I had to, when I do my own self talk with myself, to to kind of check in with myself in my day and to kind of go over my day to see how it was and what I've learned from it and what things can I be better at. So yeah, I have to check myself sometimes, and yeah, so I do have to do that. And I was almost forgot my chain of thought, but I think I just grabbed it back. um, uh, yes, so we have that. It goes back to that open communication, and I've learned that now that we are where we're at now in our journey. We've progressed a lot. That now I can ask Monica, like, hey Monica, how did you feel about this? And she'll tell me how she feels about something, so that helps me get some information. So now we're at that stage where I can ask her questions, and she'll tell me why, because I want to know, like, I want to know how she feels about something, to make sure we're doing the right thing, or if we have to make a change or something. So that's a huge plus for us.
Hmm. And talking about pluses, because we are starting to come up on time, and I do want to give you an
Hmm.
opportunity to do things like promote for the book you had mentioned, whatnot, before. But I like to really end things on like a super positive note. And you know if you had to pick the top 3 victories your daughter experienced, um, in through therapies and gaining skills and understanding social cues. And maybe it's something like potty training, or like you mentioned, she was nonverbal till she was 7 or 8. Like,
Hmm.
what would be like the top 3 victories for her that really stand out to you?
Well, that first one, of course, would be talking, being able to talk. That was the biggest, most impactful one that we needed help in, and she was able to overcome. She's just a hard worker. So that would be the first one. um I think the next one I would say would be we were able to overcome being a toe walker. I know a lot of people need to toe walk, and everyone's reasons is different. For us, she was just at the time scared to walk on the earth, because it's uneven surfaces. So through her hard work and having occupational therapy, and then kind of learning our own fun ways to uh, make our own movie scenes out of our favorite characters, I would just kind of input some of these activities that would help us for uh, strength in our feet, our ankles, and going all the way up to chain legs to hips. And then she was able to overcome that. So to see her from being scared to walking on earth to now being able to run when she wants to run, and to be able to walk and in creek water in the mountain town that we live in to replay a Frozen 2 scene. That's big right there. To walk in water where you're going up against the resistance of creek water coming at your direction, and then walking in that water where you got the moving sands, you got different sized rocks that you're stepping on, and so forth. That was another big milestone right there. Is that, you know, where she can walk and run and do all that now, doesn't have to feel scared to walk on the earth. Uh, there's so many more, but I would say number three would be overcoming being a picky eater, because that nutrition is important for so many factors, and I can give you a couple. It helped us reduce hyperactivity of knowing what foods to stay away from for us, what foods that help us, and with that being said, um, her energy has increased for her. Her sleep has become better. Um, her her mood has improved, and it helped her being more productive naturally in school. Um, Her overall wellness, her immune system has become stronger, where she she rarely becomes sick. The only time she would become sick, and it's only been a couple of times in the past since 2019, has been just when her immune system has run low because something has just um, been so hard on her in life that eventually the system gets drained. And the way we overcame being a picky eater, to put this in there real quick, is that I was like, oh my gosh, we got, I understand we like chicken nuggets and so forth, but we're only eating a couple of foods. And I know it's a texture thing with our sensory needs. So I got it. I learned and I
Mm-hmm.
got it. Excuse me. But uh, it was, I had to put on my creative thinking cap again. So how can I help her? Because it all boils down to what I've learned is that you the parent, you're gonna have to, majority of the time it's up to us to find a way. So I was like, I went back to our Disney World and our characters, and at that time it was Alice in Wonderland that was popular. And I was like, Monica, you know what? I was like, I'm gonna eat this yellow banana for Alice's beautiful blonde hair because I wanted to stay like that forever. And she knows I meant it because I did mean it, because I'm down for Alice. So shortly after that, excuse me, she was like, me too. So from that day on, we started to eat a lot more fruits and vegetables. And she was like, I'm eating this red apple for Mulan because of her red dress. I want her to be able to wear that and to do all the things that she does. So she was looking at it like I'm helping her. And she also like, I'm also helping myself. It's like, yeah, Monica, you're doing. I'm so proud of you for eating these different foods now, because yes, you are helping yourself. You're getting good stuff inside your body, and it's keeping you healthy, and we're fighting off sick bugs and all that kind of stuff. So that's how we did that.
Hmm. That's awesome. Anyway, I'm gonna have to try something like that with him because that's what I'm struggling with right now is getting him to eat new stuff. And I've got him licking things, but I
Uh
can't
huh.
get him to actually chew it up and eat it. It's a problem.
Yeah, you're just. I
Um,
mean, everyone is different, so you're gonna find your own creative way in your guys' world to make that happen, and just
mhm.
just give it time. You'll hopefully you'll get there sooner than later.
Yeah, and one more thing before I let you promote. If you had to give one piece of advice to parents out here who are just getting into this, like maybe they're experiencing frustration, they don't know what to do, what piece of advice would you give them to kind of like bring them hope?
Um, is it okay if I share two?
Go for it.
Okay, I will go back to myself where I mentioned that in your local area, join some support groups and start there. Also, I've my biggest resource right now is going on YouTube or other social media platforms. And whatever you may be going through with your child that you need help with, Google those keywords, and after that, type autistic. The results you're going to get is autistic adults who have their own channel. I've learned more now recently by following autistic adults who have been there, done that on the things that we're looking to get help in because they are the true experts. So those two things right there.
That's awesome. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all this experience. 18 years of experience is no joke. And whether you see about it yourself or not, it was deeply insightful and honestly elucidating on a lot of things that even me, as I've got 6 years in, but I'm still kind of new to the situation. It helped me personally, so I know it's going to help other people out there. I'd like you to take this time now, and you had mentioned you're an author, you're a fitness trainer. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about that and promote anything you'd like.
Okay, so I'll start with the fitness trainer part. So when I transitioned back in 2014 to being an independent trainer, I wanted to focus on helping older adults at the time. Um, when I was in the tech school for becoming a trainer, everyone, including me, wanted to work with athletes. But when I went to do my externship or whatever you call that, I chose the YMCA because I had been going there since I was a teenager. I got fascinated with Stallone, so I wanted to look, build a physique like his, and. But anyhow, so I did my externship at the Y, and it said, "Here's our group fitness classes. Take whatever you need, get your hours, so you're done." And by the way, when I was done, they wanted to hire me, so I got the job right away. But anyhow, as I was taking those classes, I took the athletic ones, of course, and then I started taking other ones. I was curious. I fell in love with the silver sneakers class, which is it's geared at older adults, but there's also people that go in there like post rehab that can't do the traditional fitness stuff on the floor. Where in silver sneakers, you can work out your whole body and you have a an upbeat, fun professional teaching the class. And I even took workshops for it too. I liked it so much that they modify exercises. So I could do everything now with like a sponge ball or a pair of resistance bands or a very light pair of dumbbell weights and use a chair to help with balance. And I can work out my entire body. And it's all thanks to those classes right there. So I started on that path, helping out other older adults. And then in transition to Monica needed that continued support for exercise, and I started training out training autistic people. So I do that right now. I have a handful of clients, and so I've just learned how to modify exercises where everyone's included. So it doesn't matter where they are on their journey with exercise. We're going to start where they're at, and there's things that we can do. So it started right there for that fitness part. So I do have on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. I named it Simple Fitness Autism. So I just barely started those channels, but it's just simple, just how it is, how it's read, simple exercises that people can do. And if they have questions, they can always comment on it, and I'm happy to answer it. Um, Shifting to the book part right now, like I said earlier, my first book, I call that my first actually real book because it's at least over 130 pages. Um, it's a long title, so that is Living Life Through Their Eyes Together on the Autism Spectrum or Journey. You know what? Give me 1 second. Let me get that. Hold on a second. Okay, so it's such a long title, I have to didn't remember it all. So it's Living Life Through Their Eyes, Our Journey Together on the Autism Spectrum. So I published these books on Amazon. This one's under Gary Martinez. Some of my other books are under Gary Martinez Jr. I don't know how many I have total. Maybe it's about 9 or 10. Those ones are more or less short reads, like 20 pages or so, because we just sometimes just want to share our stories of things that we do in our life just to kind of give a little insight to people out there of what it's like in an autism world and the things that we do just to kind of share and give back.
That's amazing. And If anyone wants to get into contact with you, if they have like any direct questions, is there a way they can do that?
Sure, email would be the easiest. My email is Gary Martinez with a Z 650 @gmail.com.
Well, Gary, I really appreciate you sitting down and having this conversation with me. You provided a lot of insight, a lot of elucidation, and honestly, you know, my main goal here is so that other parents don't feel alone or as alone, or at least know that there are people out here who understand, what we're all going through and the struggles we come to and different things we can do to help our children. And I feel like you've really added to that. So, honestly, foundationally, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, you're welcome. I appreciate you for having me on and having us autism parents get on here and share our story. Everyone has something different, and I mean, podcast is one of the biggest things out there. So many people can just tune in and listen to a podcast. It makes it easy and convenient. So, thank you for all your hard work because a lot goes on behind the scenes. So, yeah, I appreciate you, CJ.
Thank you for tuning in to the Brighter Spectrum podcast. If you have any comments, questions, or stories to share, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, feel free to reach out to me at brighterspectrumpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and keep shining a light on the journey of parenting.
Thank you for listening.